I got a phone call from my mom. That phone call was, your uncle was just shot and killed. I was the one who went to identify my uncle's body, right? And he got 2 bullets to the back of his head, and his whole face was, trust me, it's an image that remain in my mind to this day. Before I even started to record the video, I started to cry. I haven't cried in years, and the emotion took over me so much that, I was just crying. So then after, when, like, I released those tears, and somehow when I cried there, it felt good in the sense of, like, my body, I felt like a burden taken off of me. And I believe that sometimes when men don't cry and they try to hold it in, it actually turns into a burden.
Today I'm speaking with Claudio Luces Smith. He's a Coast Guard officer of 22 years. He's a father, a husband, and a leader. But his story isn't just about success. He was born into poverty. So his story is one of struggle, purpose, and mission to guide the next generation. Mr. Luces Smith, welcome to Manhood Speaks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you on. You're a man in midlife. What responsibility do you feel toward the youth, especially in guiding them away from destructive choices?
Well, I must say, as I heard the term midlife, it dawned on me that, I'm really at that place. And when I was a youth growing up, I would look up at others in my community, be it my own stepfather, my uncle, because at that time they were actually in their midlife. And I would look up to them for guidance and for advice. And now that I'm in that position, to me, it's a great responsibility now, being a father, right? Being a husband, being an officer, and being a man. Because I believe that in society, we are lacking a lot of male figures who really step forward to be men, and to be men who are also role models.
There comes a time when every man gets tired of the weight that he's carrying alone, tired of suffering in silence, tired of pretending that he has it all together. And that is why I created Manhood Speaks Brotherhood. It is a private school community where regular men like you and I can connect, support each other, and build together. In this community, you're going to find real and raw conversations, but also other brothers who are willing to challenge and support your growth. So, click the link in the description and take your seat at the fire. And let's begin this process of transformation. Now, let's get you back to the interview.
So I believe that my responsibility is one to really guide, and in the same way that I would have received guidance in my, childhood to teenage years, I really embrace this opportunity now to be able to be a beacon to guide the youths of today, starting with my own children, and then my extension to my nieces, my nephews. And the way I look at it as a tree growing out, starting with my children. And I tend to tell some of the young people I mentor, some of them don't have fathers. So I even allow them to consider me to be like a father figure, because sometimes you see that emptiness that they feel because some of them, their fathers would have passed away. Some of them haven't even never known their fathers. And I just try to be that father figure and to have that responsibility to guide them and to let them know that the choices they make, will have consequences, which can be positive or negative. So I try to instill values that will bring about that positive result in their lives.
So in essence, you are giving back what was poured into your life as a youth.
Yes, I look at it as that. just as that positive was poured into me, that positivity was poured into me, I'm looking to pour it into others. But what I've recognized also over the years, because I actually started mentorship in 2009, we are now in 2025. I realized that the times are changing. And when I compare some of the mentorship I did in 2009 when I was 29 to now that I'm 45, I've recognized that even, for example, the attention span of youths are different, right? And you would have just told me that I'm giving back what was poured into me. And when the positivity was poured into me, I was receiving, I was in a mood of receiving that. I find a lot of youths nowadays, it's more difficult, and the method you use to pour that discipline in, because I must say, if I go to tell you some of the methods that the discipline was poured into me, nowadays Children's Authority and Child Protection Unit may be looking for some of my I won't call names, I don't want to get in trouble, but right, I mean, long ago there were different methods, and nowadays you have to really realign yourself to the current reality, and even the resilience or lack thereof at times with the youths of today.
Like that. Let's reflect a little bit. When you look at your own youth, what choices shape you into the man that you are today?
Well, I would start by saying my grandfather, Calvin Edwards, God rest his soul, right? My grandfather to me was the first person that I can recall as a youth that actually put me to sit down and had a conversation with me. And I felt that communication was taking place. It wasn't a method by probably punishing me and not giving me a reason, because there were things I did. I would just get, licks, right? I would get licks for doing something. And sometimes I never got a reason. And my grandfather put me to sit down one day. I was about 8 or 9. And he told me, you don't have to make the same mistakes over and over, or you don't have to make the mistakes that others are making. He said, you can observe what others are doing and learn from their mistakes. And he took that not only from me being, age 8, he even gave me an example going into the future. And he told me, for example, if I see some young people with a particular attitude doing something and it lands them in trouble, it lands them in trouble with the law, with the police, right? Because up in my area, there were some blocks in the area that persons would sell drugs and stuff. And he would give me an example and say, if you follow that bad company, whenever the consequence come to them, if you follow, you would also be part of it. So he said you have to watch the company you keep. So it started by my grandfather and the messages he would give me to help me form making a better choice. And then my mother was another person who would always guide me, because I saw a transition from when I went to primary school into secondary school. And I realized when I went into secondary school, my mother started to speak to me way much more than she would have been speaking to me in primary school. So in primary school, she felt that I was handling everything and everything was good. And I remember getting a lecture before going to secondary school. I passed for Shogunas Junior Secondary School, which was my 4th choice, not my first choice. We'll talk about that in another story.
Sure.
But I remember going to that school, and probably the first week of school, I was bullied. I was bullied. And I came back home, and there and then I got the realization of, this is not primary school. I have 20 students in my class, and probably the whole school is just about 100 persons. This was now a bigger environment. And I always look at these transitions from primary school to secondary school, then from secondary school, like to the world of work, where you then go out into society. And I think that youth sometimes need to get that guidance as they make these transitions. And I think yourself and myself, we would know about a transition from a civilian world into a military world.
Correct.
And when we go into these new environments, if we are not prepared, it can affect us in a particular way. So when I look back at my youth and the choices I make, you know, it's really about those role models and those mentors who were there for me. And that's why my posture now is to really always be someone that a youth could come to, just in the way that I was able to go to a youth back then.
So what I'm getting here is the importance of having conversations with the youth in order to point them in a positive direction.
Yes, and if there's one thing I must add, sometimes I used to think my mother is talking to me over and over and over, and sometimes I used to think, you know, she told me that already, and she would repeat it almost daily.
Mm.
And over time, I recognized when she was not there, I would like hear a silent voice in my head, right? So she would tell me certain things like, when school is over, you know, you go to get your maxi and you make your way home. Don't stay back and lime and go to any places without permission and all of that. She said, right? Because when I went to junior sec, it was still half day. So it is to finish midday, right? So she said, tell me, if junior sec is finishing midday, I needed to be home by 1 p.m., right? And sometimes I would go into Shogunas, and then it's 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., and, you know, she's worried. And I'm not worried. I went to the arcade. I went to line with my friends. And then when I arrive at home, she would tell me over and over and over, because really and truly, a lot of these things were distractions for me. And I wasn't able to manage my academics with doing these things because they were distractions. And when I started to listen to my mom, because I realized the company I keep in, they weren't doing well in their work, but they were focused on other things that were giving us entertainment. And just her speaking to me over and over and over, although I felt it being a bit annoying in the first instance, as I became a young adult, I recognized that I would say that I was saved by her repetition, because I think some parents may get frustrated and just not communicate or don't have those conversations. And then when you don't have those conversations with your children, other persons do. And the other persons sometimes guide them in a direction that is going to end up detrimental.
Mm. Got you. Creating something with purpose often has its own challenges. You wrote a song, recorded it, and also produced a video. And this song is called the Choices Anthem.
Yes.
What inspired that song?
Well, in 2023, I was contacted by the director of MILAT, which is a military-led academic training, which is a organization within Trinidad and Tobago that supports, you know, youth development. And I was asked to be the master of ceremonies for their graduation at the Queen's Park, Savannah. And I accepted, because anything with youths, I am there to accept. So I was told that the rehearsal will start at 0900 hours, 9 a.m. So I was there at 8:30, right? And while there at 8:30, I arrived first. In fact, I arrived before everyone. I was there at 8:30. And around 8:40, a group of MILAT cadets arrived, just about 20 of them. And I was sitting within the Savannah covered area. And I was in uniform, right? My white Coast Guard uniform. And they walked in, and when they saw me, you know, they started a buzz, because sometimes youths get a buzz when they see someone in uniform, especially if they're in my lot, because they may have aspirations to join the military. So they walk up to me and, you know, they said, "Good morning, sir." I told them, "Good morning." I asked them, "Where are the others?" They say, "They are on the way. It's just that their maxi arrived first." I told them, "No problem." I tell them, "Have a seat and wait until the others arrive." So they were sitting, and one of them pulled out their phones, and he was playing a particular song, and I saw them, you know, bobbing their heads, and I said, "Let me listen a little bit to what song is this." And I started to hear a song about someone shooting someone in their head and the brain matter scatter and all of that. And, you know, I stopped them for a while and I say, "You know, young men, what song you're listening to there?" And they mentioned a particular artist and started talk about the artist. So I knew about the artist too. So I said, "Oh, that's the person you all are talking about." And they said, "Yes." Right? I asked them, "You know, what are you learning from these lyrics?" And I did recognize that one of them told me, "You know, sir, I see reality. Where I from, you know, I from the ghetto, and that's what has happened in the ghetto, you know." So this guy who's singing, he's singing about his own experience. And, you know, as someone involved in performing arts and someone involved in songwriting, I know that a lot of my songs come from a place of my own experience. So I can understand if the song the person is singing is something that they saw in their community or something that exists in their community, right? I could understand that. And I can even understand that even when I was a youth going to school in the maxis, you know, they would play some dancehall that will have particular lyrics, which I used to sing also. So it is not like I was coming at them with a mentality that to just say, you know, switch off the phone and don't listen to that. But more so, try to find out the reason behind the popularity, the artists and the music they were listening to. And really and truly, that popularity comes from that grassroots experience, right? And it took me back to my community because, you know, where I grew up had that experience also. But I asked myself, what made a difference with the way I interpreted things from the way some of my own friends who I grew up with, who are now some deceased, some in prison, and what caused them to make that choice and caused me not to make that choice. So then a thought came to my mind, just the word choices came to my mind. And just the word alone, choices, because I wanted to speak with them about it. So I told them, "Listen, what? I know you're listening to the song and the song is saying do something, but you don't have to do what the song is saying to do. That is the experience of that person. That may not be your experience. And you are currently in a program called MyLat, where you actually made a choice to join an institution that is going to impart positive values to you." So I say, regardless of the background you come from, regardless of your circumstance, you now have a choice in front of you to make. And that choice could either, you know, put you in one direction or another. And, you know, after they said, "Well, yes, sir, we understand what you're saying, but sir, you know about this artist and thing. We thought it's only young people know about the artist." So I said, "Yes, I do like to inquire about what the young people are listening to because I have young children myself, you know." And look, there's one of the artists called K Lion. He's deceased now, and he sang a song called Malandro. And for those who know Spanish, Malandro means like gangster. Well, my son's name is Alejandro. So a day I heard him singing, "We living with the narcos, real malandro." So I said, "What you singing there?" He said, "I don't want you to know. My name is Alejandro." And he tried to change the lyrics of what he said. So I just laughed and I said, "Well, the song you listen to, I know the song." I says, "K Lion." He said, "Daddy, what you know about K Lion, you know?" Back then he was 12. And he said, "What you know about K Lion?" So I said, "My 12-year-old son knows about K Lion and some of the other artists. I need to also know about them." So I actually went and started listening to some of their songs and the rhythmic pattern of some of their songs. And I never in my life before did a dancehall. I was more a guy who was doing soca music and taking Latin and merging it with soca music. That was my thing. And then I thought about, well, let me do a dancehall to the beat that they use. And I started writing the song. And as I write out the verse and then the chorus, and I kept going, I said, I need to get a beat that will go with the song. So I went online and looking at different beats, and I came up on this producer in Jamaica called Young Beats, right? And Young Beats actually does music for Vibes Cartel and his son Little Addy. And I emailed him because I am a person that I believe I am bold, right? I emailed him thinking maybe he may not even respond. I emailed him asking for permission to use the beat, to release the beat. And he responded about probably 6 months after.
Wow.
So I just had the song sitting down there. I didn't really know the melody yet, but I wanted a beat to kind of finish it. And when I see he actually sent back an email and said, yes, you can purchase it. So I purchased it, and then I started to fit the lyrics into the instrumental. And I was finished with it by 2023, and I was going to record in 2024. And something just tell me just hold back on it and don't record it just yet. So I just had it there. And in fact, I have about 500 songs of different genres just sitting in my songs bank. And come to 2025, I went to buy my mom in the area of Punapir. And while speaking to my mom, she was telling me about some young men in the area and certain things that they were doing. And I was thinking, I am from this same area, and I would have come out of this area and become someone positive. And I told myself, it dawned on me that I never went back into my community ever since I left. So I left my community after secondary school, and I never went back. And I realized I never went back into my primary school. I never went back into my secondary school. Right? And I'm thinking, but wait now, how come I never went back? And then it dawned on me that I joined the military, and I felt that the military and giving service to my country was at the forefront. And I felt during all those years that I was giving everything to the military and I had no time. So it was simply that I felt I had no time. And I think a lot of times we think we don't have time, or we don't want to make the time. So that time management is important. So I told myself, I want to do the song, and I want to go in my community and do the song. And I want to connect to the youths in my community. So I went up there and I started to walk from house to house in the community, telling what I'm going to do with a notepad and taking note of who would like to participate in the video, telling them of the different rules. I say I have no money to pay persons. It's a voluntary thing. And my mom, who is 75, told me it's the first time she saw the community come together in that way. That had a special meaning to me from the inception when I wrote the song for youths in the Queen's Park Savannah down to going to Kunapir where I grew up. It just brought everything together for me.
I like how we were speaking about communication earlier on, and we spoke about the importance of communication. But later on here, we even dove a bit deeper, where you spoke about how you interacted with these young men, and that was important. So it's not only communicating, but also how we communicate to get our message across. I think that was very important. In creating something with purpose, there are often challenges. While creating this song, what internal battles were you dealing with that came up?
Because the song was conceptualized in the Queen's Park Savannah, and I went home and I got the lyrics, and I live in Port of Spain, so everything was in Port of Spain. But when I went to my community in Kernaham Trace, Chinchin Road, Kunapir, when I went into the community in 2008, actually August of 2008, unfortunately, I was duty in Chagramas. I was what you call a duty operations officer. And while working in Chagramas, I got a phone call from my mom. That phone call was your uncle was just shot and killed with 3 other men. They were in our community next to our parlor playing dominoes, and apparently some criminals came up in the area to go after a particular person who escaped. And because they saw those persons, they actually decided to kill the 4 men. Those men were 54, 52, 48, and like 32. Right? One being my uncle, the other 3 being neighbors. And, they were fathers, they were husbands. And, when my mom told me that, I asked for permission to leave and to go up there. And when I arrived, police was there already. And that whole crime scene that I would have been seeing on the news, I never saw it in real life. I always saw it on the news, or I saw it on the newspapers. And as I started walking up the street and seeing the area bad off and the police and, some people, it's just that scene in my mind. I'm writing the choices. I'm have the choices anthem. I'm thinking now, I'm going to start the video right there. I'm going to start the video right there at that scene, which to me has always been a place and I never wanted to go to. So if I go by my mom, I wouldn't want to go up to that area because I was the one who went to identify my uncle's body, right? And he got 2 bullets to the back of his head and his whole face was, trust me, it's a image that remain in my mind to this day. Before I even started to record the video, I started to cry. The person who recorded the video is actually a retired staff sergeant and the owner of Red, White, and Black Entertainment in Arima. And, I explained it to him and I was just there trying to gather myself because I have to do a music video, I have to compose myself and sing. And the emotion took over me so much that, I was just crying. So then after when, I released those tears, I tell myself, you're doing this for your uncle. You're doing this for those men. You're doing this for the community. And then even as I was doing it, some of the sons of the men who were murdered were there. One of the wives of one of the men came and, and she hugged me up and I hugged her up. And she started to cry and I started to cry also with her. And that was such a surreal moment for me, something I never expected. Then it really told me that, listen what, this song has a deeper purpose. And although I'm feeling this struggle inside of me to compose myself, I said I need to do it for the community and by extension for Trinidad and Tobago, by extension the Caribbean, because the producer is from Jamaica, and by extension, globally. It's a message that can go out to all youths, wherever they are, because crime affects us all, and the choices young people make, it affects them and it affects others. So that was my major struggle, and to this day, I still reminisce of that moment. And sometimes when I see the news, I understand how, the saying, when it hits home, there's a saying that when it hits home, it hits the hardest. And
Yeah.
to me, it hit home back then, and I want to do my part. However small it is, even if it's small, I will do my part. Even if it's starting small, I will do my part. Just like how you are doing your part with Manhood Speaks, I will do my part with, Never Give Up and the Choices Anthem.
That was a truly powerful story, and I appreciate you sharing that. That also brings to mind, why do you think it is important for a man to express grief?
To me, personally, growing up, I would always hear the term, boys don't cry. Something happened, and as a boy, you may cry about it, and you may hear the term, to toughen up and to be brave and to be strong. So something that a girl may be able to cry for. So a girl get a jab sting. That's something I got a lot growing up. Like my sister get a jab sting. And she might cry tears and, right, and, and it's swollen and all of that. And it may be okay for her to express herself because sometimes crying is considered to be a feminine thing. You would know even if you transition it into things like, the military, right? You go into a particular ordeal, right? In battle per se, you can't be crying. You can't be soft. So as men, as boys, we're not allowed to sometimes express our soft side. There is a soft side. There is a compassionate side that men can tap into. However, sometimes society puts us into corner. And when we're in that corner, just like in a boxing ring, if you end up in the corner and that person is coming at you with those blows, sometimes you feel like there's nowhere to go to. So what happens is that we hold it in. And I think when we hold it in, it alters our attitude, it alters our behavior, it alters even our personality. You see, holding that in is like a pressure cooker. It's like a pressure cooker, and at a particular point in time, it can just explode. And not being able to cry, because let me tell you something. How I told you earlier on that when I went to the site of my uncle, I cried. I haven't cried in years. And somehow when I cried there, it felt good in the sense of like my body, I felt like a burden taken off of me. And I believe that sometimes when men don't cry and they try to hold it in, it actually turns into a burden. So that tears that you don't let go, that one teardrop becomes a weight inside of you. Sometimes it manifests itself in stress and depression. So I think it's important to cry, because that is a mechanism by which the body actually regulates itself in maintaining sanity.
How has suppressing your emotions affected you as a man?
Firstly, I think that I was conditioned. I was conditioned to suppress my emotion. I was bullied in primary school. I say it now. My surname is Smith. They would not say Smith. They would say Shit. Just saying this to you right now is a sign of my healing, because there was a time I didn't want to talk about it at all. I didn't want to talk about my surname. In fact, it reached a level where I felt I wanted to change my surname. Sometimes, even with our emotions, it tends to want to put us in a place where we want to hide our truth. You know, we may try to hide our emotions and not express it and suppress it, but it manifests itself within us in the form of stress, mental stress. It is there, even though we may try to, it is in our subconscious. And we may try to say we are okay, because we want everyone to know we are okay. Most persons will ask them, how are you? Most persons will just say, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay. But that is just the surface answer. And deep down inside, we all have a lot going on. You have things going on. I have things going on right now, because that is life. Life throws things at us, and everyone deals with things differently. But I found that when I started to release my emotions, it was a decision I took. And that decision came from thinking that, sometimes someone may do something to hurt you and you wouldn't say nothing about it. So I told myself, because I thinking now that I may not want to hurt that person. I'm thinking they're hurting me, but I'm thinking that, so I was being bullied. So I was thinking the solution to this is be a bully to the person who is bullying me. So someone who was giving me, taunting me about my surname, I found a name to tell them also. So I went ahead and tell them that name, and before you know it, I became a bully. What I didn't like them to do for me, so like the golden rule, do unto others as you want them to do unto you. So when I realized that the person who was bullying me, I started to bully them, and then both of us started to get bullied, and then we become friends, and then we become advocates now to try to tell others to not bully. And then in actually expressing how I felt about it openly, it is something that has put me in a better place, because I am living true to myself. Now, I must say, when we speak about suppressing emotions, at times trust comes into play, because sometimes to not suppress your emotions and to express emotion to someone else, you need to have that trust in that person. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I found there were times when I wouldn't want to trust anyone to tell them a particular feeling I'm going through. However, I realized that when I connected to music, when I connected to, the creative arts, for some reason, that was able to help me. And, to other persons, it may be gardening, it may be playing small goal football. I know you just do like boxing, and I think you just do push-ups on 2 fingers and things, right? So everyone has something they may connect to help them express the emotions and not suppress the emotions. And what I've recognized is that there are positive coping mechanisms we can connect to, and there are negative coping mechanisms. So once again, we have a choice. So as I tell a youth I was speaking with recently who was abusing drugs, I asked him why was he abusing drugs. He told me his mom passed away, his father passed away, and he couldn't deal with that grief. So he turned to drugs. And it's inevitable that one day, all of us who have mom or dad, my dad passed away, my mom is still alive, but it's inevitable that all of us at some point in time will have to deal with grief. And when that grief comes, some persons hold on to it and never let it go. And, they mind it and it turn into a monster. And sometimes they lose themselves and never find themselves again. And some people are able to accept the grief as part of life. It is part of life. And in doing so, you actually put yourself in a position to be strong for someone else and to be the shoulder that someone else can lean on.
You touch on some very important topics here. You were bullied in your childhood. How did that affect you into adulthood?
It caused me to be a withdrawn, introverted person. I would tend not to engage a lot with certain persons, especially those who I think may be the ones that would bully me. So I would read persons. So like within primary school where it started, I would read who are the more quiet persons and I will tend to stick with them. And those I know who may be inclined to bully me, I will try to avoid them. And for some reason, they will always find you. They will always find you. And for some reason, we could be discussing probably a TV show or talking about a football match that we were playing. And sometimes I never used to understand how someone will just go off topic to just make fun of someone. And, I recognize that the bullying wasn't about surnames alone. There were different things, someone looks, if someone was overweight, different things that would just be bullying. And then when I recognized in primary school, but wait now, almost everyone was being bullied for something. And sometimes except those who were the seasoned bullies. So those are persons who establish themselves as those characters. And thinking about it as I grew into teenage and into adult life, I started to realize that a lot of persons who were bullies were actually looking for a channel to express things that were happening with them internally. I got to find out that one of the persons that were bullying us a lot in primary school, he used to actually get bullied a lot at home. He used to be taken advantage of and he used to get some extreme punishment. I get to find out that certain things that were done to him, it were actually cruel and inhumane. And he then came to school and he would release that onto us as students. And I remember a time in Shoguna's junior sec when they were bullying this girl, right? This girl was being bullied about her looks and, they were calling her ugly, right? They were telling her that she looks like an ape and she was looking ugly and no one likes her and no one wants to be around her. And something just told me to let those people know, listen what, I am a friend. I realized that in Shoguna's junior sec, I started being the friends of a lot of persons who were being bullied or who had it's like I became someone that would defend others. And then I went into Presidential College Shogunas. And when I went there also, even recently, one of my classmates were telling me, he was calling me and asking me advice on something. And look at that, 25 years after, he's calling me to ask me for some advice. And as I give him the advice, he told me, Claudio, I always remember you was always someone who used to always help others. And I remember a time I was being bullied and you stepped in for me and you didn't have to do that. And you stepped in for me against the person that was bullying me. And I couldn't self-remember doing that. But he recalled it. And then when he told me about it, then I kind of remember, oh yes, there was someone who was picking on him and I actually went to defend him. And I think that for me, the bullying that I experienced put me in a place where I don't want anyone to experience that I had. And I am aware of persons who would have committed suicide. When my daughter was going to school in a secondary school, she came home crying and telling me one of her classmates committed suicide. I was shocked. I asked what happened. And he took an overdose of tablets based on being heckled every day at school. And only then the class and the school felt that shock waves that went through the school that a student actually did this. And that can happen not only within a school, it can happen within a community, it can happen within the workplace. So that is why I believe that for me personally, in everything I do, I try to teach the youth that it is not nice to do something that could be damaging to someone and that can even lead them to want to harm themselves, because cyberbullying exists right now at a rate that is exorbitant. So that was my journey.
I think this is such an important topic because I think sometimes we fail to recognize how when we were bullied in childhood, how it comes and rolls over into adulthood. For example, I remembered when I was bullied in school, and that affected me in such a way that I had low self esteem. And
Mhm.
even as a military officer, I wouldn't stand up for myself on many
Mhm.
occasions. And because of that low self esteem that was connected to being bullied,
Really.
I didn't show up as myself, as authentic as I should. And that pretty much carried through for a lot, or I would say most of my adult life, until
Mhm.
I became aware of the connection. So I
Yes.
think that is something that as men in midlife, that is something that I encourage to pay attention to. These experiences in our past, in our childhood, that shows up in our adult life.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And whenever I talk to youths, I was in a school recently speaking the standard fives. So I speak to the girls by themselves and I speak to the boys by themselves. And, you know, I wouldn't say surprisingly, but among the boys, right, existed more bullying. And amongst the girls, I tend to see like more compassion and more empathy amongst the girls. And as I said before, those are what persons will say are feminine emotions. So if you have a brother like my son, when I drop him off to school, I would hug him before he goes up the step. And I was doing that all the time. I would never stop doing it until a day he arrived at home. He told me, Dad, the hug thing, looking kind of bad. I said, what do you mean? So my friends and them telling me, use daddy love boy and use daddy love son and you're getting hug up and all of that. And I said, that comes from a place where some of them are not getting that love. So he's being bullied because his father hugs him before he goes into the school. So I transitioned that hug into now a handshake. So you do a special handshake. And that is better. So the friends see that at school. Hey, you and your father have a handshake. So it is important to transition like learning points. So like
Yeah.
you're being bullied, you're self-aware of it, or you're trying to teach a youth how to deal with it, how to cope with it. And you may need to assess the mechanism by which you do so. Because I remember there was a school where a young man took a knife to school. He took a knife to school, and when the security was searching his bag, they saw a knife. And they said, why are you coming to school with this knife? And he said, there's someone who was bullying me. And today was the day I was going to stab him. Right? And we need to keep talking. I know we said earlier on about communication and conversation. So podcasts is about talking, right? Music is about communicating a message. So we need to keep communicating that message. One person may hear us, and that one person may go on to be an impact to others. So we just have to keep the conversation going. We must find a way.
Must find a way. It's a Luces spit. What brings you hope today?
What brings me hope? I will tie it back to the Choices Anthem. When I was in the middle of getting persons to be role players in the Choices Anthem, I hit a stumbling block where some of the persons that I had put down to do different roles, for some reason, were not available. Some of them were working, some of them didn't come from work. And based on how the timing was going, there were some roles that supposed to be filled that were not filled. I was thinking to change the script until one of my neighbors actually came and told me, there's some young boys up the road that I could go and talk to. Right? He knew them. Because what I realized when I went back into my community, I don't know the 19 and 20-year-olds. I don't know them. Right? I know the 40-year-olds. Those are the persons I grew up with. So in fact, I found out some of those persons were 2 and 3 when I was in the community. And he went to them and told them about what I was doing. And, they came down the road in a group and they actually told me, listen, what now? What you're doing is a good thing. These are young men, 17, 18, 19 years old, young men. And they are standing speaking with me and telling me, sir, what you're doing is a good thing. Now, the guy who went and spoke to them said, that guy there is a big boy in the Coast Guard, He does have one uniform with sword and thing. So I told him, it don't matter. I said, that don't matter that if I have a sword and uniform, that don't matter. I say, what matters is that I am doing something within the community and I would like you all to participate. And there were parts of the video that wasn't even self in the script that these young men started to tell me, if you want this thing to be impactful, you need to do this. You need to do that. You need to let us run. You need to let someone be on the ground. There were scenes which were not written in the script that these young men came forward. And then when I started to ask their names, I wasn't being given their real names. I was given nicknames. And as I heard the nicknames, I started to try to connect nicknames to what they do, some of the nicknames. And then I get to find out that some of them were actually artists, right? Some of them were actually artists. And then one of them told me, go onto YouTube. And I went into YouTube and I started to look at the videos. And some of them were actually artists singing music. And I mean, one of them told me, well, sir, your music is a real positive kind of vibes and thing, but that don't really go no way now. You see, that not really going to get no forward. Right? They're not going to go viral. You say, if you really want to go viral, you say, what you need to do? And he gave me advice of certain things I need to do. So I hear him out. And I said, listen, what? I said, I am sure about myself. Right? And I'm sure that I'm not doing this for hype. I'm not doing this for it to go viral. I'm not chasing, as in Chronic said in a song, he do it for the love. He do it for the likes. I'm doing this to send a positive message. So I said, each one of you have a choice to make. And right there and then, I started to ask them a question about their future. One started to tell me he has a child, and I asked him what does he want for his child in the future? What does he want for himself? And I got a lot of hope being able to, I have those persons on WhatsApp right now. And when the Choices Anthem came out, they sent me a message and put fire, this tune real bad, and getting that feedback from the youths was good. And when they said this tune real bad, they meant it's real good. That's what they meant. Because when you say, hey, that car real bad, in our dialect, we mean it is good. So in the same way, when I started my song and I say, some say Trini bad, but I say Trini good. Because I believe even the concept of Trini bad, in as much as some persons will say it is about being bad, I believe that we need to get the good into the music. And that is what gives me hope. What gives me hope is that I've now connected to some young men that I believe that I can work with, that can also champion the cause that I'm pushing, which is putting good into everything we do and making good choices. That is what gives me hope.
And hope often leads to legacy. What is the lasting impact you wish to have as a result of this song?
As you said, legacy, I think about what is the legacy that those that went before me, who assisted in molding me. There are two particular persons I mention a lot. And in another podcast, I know we would speak about a song I did with them. But as we speak about legacy and what I would hope to leave, I am connected to what mentors did for me. Instrumentally, we are speaking about manhood and midlife with men, and mentors in itself as a word, starts with mentors. And what I would like is to be a mentor and to be a role model. And I would like my music to be able to be a vessel that assist me, and that is a tool to make me a mentor and a role model, and I will say at a global level.
As a man who is in his midlife, who has clawed his way from poverty into purpose, and you are now using your voice to pull the next generation forward, I want to applaud you for what you are doing. But I know that this is the first of 5 interview sessions, and in the later sessions, we'll be diving deeper into the man, the mission, and the legacy that you hope to create. So, Mr. Luces Smith, it was a pleasure having you on Manhood Speaks.
Same here, same here.
I just want to say thank you for checking out the entire episode. Manhood Speaks is a space where regular men like you get to share their experiences so that they can inspire other men. If you wish to be a guest on this show, just send me an email at manhoodspeakspodcast@gmail.com. And I want to ask you to consider subscribing. When you subscribe, you are not just simply subscribing to another YouTube channel. You are becoming a part of a revolution. You are joining a community of brothers, men who are redefining what it means to be a man in modern society today. So subscribe, and I will see you in the next interview.